They might not give a damn for the whole state of Michigan, but yet Ohio State, their arch villain, according to ESPN, is Sherrone Moore. I think that's pretty accurate. Let's dig into that, some recruiting stuff, and more on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday. We are back in doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. We thank all of you for making us your first listen. Thank you to all of the everydayers out there that check out the show every time we post. Very excited to always have you aboard. Today, we're going to talk about an ESPN article. We're not actually going to talk as much about the Michigan side. Well, we'll touch on it, but we'll touch more on the assertion of Sherrone Moore being the arch villain to Ohio State. I'd like the reasoning here by Adam Rittenberg. We're going to get into that. We're going to get into where Michigan football recruiting turns to next with the final couple segments of the show. So that is the plan. So let's get right into it. ESPN released the top teams, arch villains across college football. I didn't look at the whole thing. I just looked at obviously Ohio State and Michigan. And Sherrone Moore is not Michigan football, but Sherrone Moore is mentioned as the arch villain for Ohio State. And I think that tracks, right? Because it couldn't, Jim Harbaugh's not there anymore. It could be Michigan football, but like they were fat and happy for the longest time. Right, like that's a big thing, right? Like they had gotten to a point, and this is, I think, why you hear a lot of the screeching coming out of Columbus with the cheating and all of that stuff, right? It's because it got to a point where they looked at what the rivalry was and said, this is our birthright to win it, because it was almost 2 decades of success in said rivalry. And along comes Jim Harbaugh. He's supposed to change it. Doesn't quite go that way, right? Like not competitive in 2015. 2016 is a whole other matter, obviously. 2017, surprisingly close. Was a game that kind of was like, the expectations on Michigan were probably similar, right? Like terrible offense, pretty good defense. Ohio State, though, not so much. Like it wasn't really considered to be like this national championship caliber team per se, but it was like on the brink of it. But it wasn't considered to be what it was going into the game this year. And yet Michigan falls short. 2018, Michigan's finally supposed to have its year, and it's a complete debacle. 2019 goes the same way. 2020 canceled due to COVID. Not from ducking out, as Ohio State fans want to believe. I mean, you can believe whatever you want. I just know that talking to people that were inside that building, like they had to talk Jim Harbaugh out of playing that game. His Michigan tenure would have ended if they played that game. Like, it's no joke to say Dan Villari was going to be the starting quarterback and multiple players that were on the scout team were going to play both sides of the football. That's how anemic the team was at that moment. Then suddenly everything shifts in 2021, and ESPN is prescient to note that Sherrone Moore was the change. Brought about in 2018 as the tight ends coach, that was the year that he was promoted offensive line coach and co-offensive coordinator. Now, obviously, Josh Gaddis was still the offensive coordinator for one more year before he had his gambit to try to be the potential man to take over Michigan football. I don't know that for a fact. I just know that that was the rumor, the scuttlebutt going around, and it didn't end up working out that way. So he left for Miami and has kind of languished since at Miami and Maryland as still the offensive coordinator and not head coach. But Sherrone Moore promoted. And that was the moment that Michigan's offensive, or not even the offensive identity, but the identity of the whole team became the offensive line. Obviously, Joe Moore Awards in 2021 and 2022. And then in 2023, no Joe Moore Award, but national championship. Obviously, there was also the cheating, as they like to say, a little bit south of here. But, I think on top of it, though, like ESPN notes that, yes, it's the offensive line difference, right? Like Michigan was able to run the ball at will against Ohio State in 2021. And it took a while, but they bullied them up front in 2022. Sherrone Moore's acting head coach and bona fide offensive coordinator in 2023. And then 2024 in a game in which Michigan had zero business winning. Right? Like, I have no qualms in saying that. I don't think any of you do. I mean, to the point where, like, I've talked to people in the building and I say that. Right? Like, I almost wanted to share something. I'm not going to. But it's one of those things that, like, Sherrone Moore clearly has something that upsets the natural state of order in the eyes of people in the Buckeye State, right? Because last year was supposed to be, right? Like, my friend, Dave Biddle, like, I call him a friend. I mean, he's probably more of an acquaintance, but I call him a friend. Like, I do adore him as a person. Like, but he's out there putting rent is due out there. Or the bill is due, you know, every year. Everyone felt like in Columbus, it was kind of the inverse 2018, right? Like, everyone had like this build up to the game in 2018. And then it goes the way it goes. And everyone's like, dead doves do not eat. I don't know what else I expected, right? Like, that was supposed to be like, you know, there were articles out saying, like, not just from Ohio State writers, but from the national media, like, you know, they're going to take out years of frustration on Michigan in this game. And it did not happen that way. And Sherrone Moore is the most common denominator in that. It's really quite unbelievable. Okay, I'm going to do one recruiting segment. And then instead of doing the two of them, we're gonna continue on this train of thought. I feel like I have more to say here. I feel like we just set the standard of what we were talking about. We're just going to continue on this train of thought, and then we'll hit recruiting in segment 3. And we're going to do that here in just a moment. But before we do, ever wish managing your money felt easier? Well, with Monarch Money, whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments and spending all in one place. So in addition to managing money, you are also building wealth. One of the things that I learned is how much I spend on food delivery. It's exorbitant. It's got its own GDP. It's its own thing, right? Like, Monarch Money, at least if nothing else, when I don't rein that in, helps me track it so I don't get in complete dire financial straits. The great thing also is that I've learned about the subscriptions that I've had and helped me cancel so many things that I set and forgot about from years ago, right? That happens all the time. So that's the great thing about Monarch Money. So with that in mind, take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. All right, let's continue on. We want to continue on the Sherrone Moore train because I think that it's one of those things that we understate. And this is one of the things that I also want to bring in that I meant to bring into yesterday's episode that I'm going to bring in here right now. If it's funny to me, I'd have to look at the recruiting rankings. Maybe I can do that on my phone real quick. But I don't think I'm going to. Yeah, let's do it. Let's just do it. But one of the funnier things to me is the narratives that exist. And this is part and parcel of kind of just the grand Michigan of it all. So Michigan's sitting at number 8 right now in the 2026 team rankings. Fell by a spot. It was number 7 yesterday, but then LSU got 2 pretty high-end commits. But I want to think about, what was the first year Marcus Freeman took over? 2022, I think, full-time. I think that was it. They were pretty good, but I mean, they finished number 7 in the country. And everyone was sitting up and being like, oh my goodness, look at this guy. Going nuts, recruiting at Notre Dame is out of control. The next year, they were 12th. But if you think about what the narrative of what Marcus Freeman is at Notre Dame, right? I recall I think I brought this up on the show a couple days ago, that when going into that season opener in 2022, Notre Dame hosting Ohio State, or no, it was 2023. Is that what it was? I can't remember what year's which. Yeah, 2023 was at Notre Dame, right? Well, whatever game it was, I don't know if it was at Notre Dame or if it was at Ohio State, but Marcus Freeman's first full game as a head coach, bona fide head coach, not like when the bowl game where he's like, taking over for one game, whatever. Chris Fowler's on the broadcast saying, these two damn fine football coaches. And it was like, how do we really know the one thing? Like Ryan Day at least had a track record, brought them to a national championship game, Ohio State. It had them doing what they were doing. Marcus Freeman hadn't done anything yet, except for recruit and just kind of like branding, essentially. Sherrone Moore doesn't have that branding. He kind of goes into the idea that I've talked about on this show going all the way back to like 2019-ish, maybe 2020. Michigan is never allowed to get better and is always going to get worse in the eyes of like whatever the hype train is. Right? Like, look at how things were this year. Yes, Michigan is expected to be ranked, but then when you present an over-under of 8.5 and you look at what the schedule is, national media is like torn on whether they surpass that or fall under it. Obviously, rivals are going to be like, they're going to struggle to get 4 wins this year. Purdue, they're building something. Like, that's just how that's going to go. But like when you look at what like other teams do, right? Like Ohio State brings in Matt Patricia, who's not coached in college forever. Or has he? I don't even know if he's coached in college. Maybe he has. I don't remember. But like they look at that and say, brilliant move by Ryan Day. Oh man, that's so good. Like whatever Jim Knowles was doing, probably going to be as good, maybe better with Matt Patricia. Brian Hartline had a mediocre outing as the offensive coordinator. They bring in Chip Kelly to kind of take things to the next level. They get to win a national championship. And then they put Hartline back in and like, brilliant move by Ryan Day. So good. Right? Like Hartline it's a revelation. The fact that he is now the offensive coordinator. Right? It kind of reminds me almost of the Family Guy joke of, we're offering 2 options. You could take the boat or you could take the mystery box. Well, a boat is a boat, but the mystery box could be anything. Could even be a boat. That's kind of what it is. But Sherrone Moore gets none of that love. Michigan gets none of that love. I'm not saying Michigan deserves necessarily to be like thought of as like Alabama or even Ohio State. But Michigan, 1 year removed from a national championship, does not get like I understand Clemson had a little bit longer term success. Michigan had a 3-year run. Clemson had, I think, a little bit longer before, right? Like a little bit longer with the national championship and everything. But like Clemson falls off for a year. Everyone's like, well, it's just a year. People don't look at Michigan that way. They fall off for a year and it's like 7-5. It's what they always were. It's what they always will be. And we talked about that back years ago, right? Like, because you can have a successful 2016 and then the next year, like the hype train's a little bit high, right? Like people say, oh, this is going to be really good. And then when it isn't, it's like, that's what they are forever. And then 2018 comes and they're really good. And people are like, maybe they'll be good this next year. And then 2019 comes up. Nope, that's what they are. That's what they will be forever. Whereas you look at like a James Franklin or a Marcus Freeman, who are very good recruiters, and obviously Notre Dame under Marcus Freeman had its best year this last year, losing in the national championship game, which is kind of what Notre Dame does at its pinnacle. And it's just like, they're just amazing. They're always going to be amazing. This is the year. Penn State has long had that built off of the 2016 success. But Sherrone Moore and Michigan do not get that type of benefit of the doubt. It is absolutely wild to me. Because yes, he's recruiting in the way that if other people, like if it was a different team emblem there with the recruiting and the recent team success, people would look at it and say, there are holdovers from that national championship team. Rod Moore type of people, right? People who contributed but weren't necessarily starters, like a Brandon Hillman, a Giovanni Elhadi, a Greg Crippen, right? And then you got a Bryce Underwood. People would be looking at it and be like, it's only a matter of time before they completely dominate, especially given how the recruiting's going. But that is not the narrative that you get. So it is kind of cool to see ESPN at least acknowledge the Ohio State issue and say Sherrone Moore might be, and I say this knowing that like we're doing a short show because I'm purposely forgot to wear the glasses, but I'm purposely somewhat dressed like Clark Kent because I'm going to see Superman here soon. That like, yeah, might be the kryptonite of the Buckeyes, right? But I think that he deserves a little bit more. Now, it doesn't mean I'm not in wait and see mode, right? But like Marcus Freeman did nothing different than what Sherrone Moore's doing and got all like kinds of lauding and just love and everything, and then lost his first couple games and it never went away. I understand, like, I can't remember what their record was in year one, but it wasn't like something that was like phenomenal. Heck, even last year, he lost to Northern Illinois. I don't know that Michigan would have lost to Northern Illinois last year, given what it had. Yeah, it flirted with some issues against Fresno State and Arkansas State, but I still think that they probably would have beaten Northern Illinois. So it is just a dichotomy that I think is bizarre, and that's where I'm at with it. All right. Let's talk a little recruiting just for a couple minutes. Who are the remaining targets? Because everything is somewhat whittled down. We're going to get to that here in just a moment. All right, let's finish out. Again, this isn't going to be the longest show. I would love to make up something over the weekend, but we know my track record with that is not great. But I am recovering from occipital neuralgia. So I might have the... plus, like, there's a press conference for basketball on Sunday, which I'm probably not going to go to because I do need to go to church and it conflicts with that. So maybe we'll do some work in lieu of that. Anyway. Let's talk recruiting. I know that's been kind of our bread and butter for the last however long, but I want to continue on with it because now it's like the amount of remaining targets is low, right? Like we know who is essentially on the docket for now. Don't be surprised. We've talked about this before. If mid-season in the actual football season, there are names that are being bandied about that we have not talked about. No one's discussed because they have been people like a Jamar Browder type or a Benny Patterson that Michigan's identified and said, we want to go after them. Mason Graham types, right? Like that, just because they aren't necessarily bundling everybody up, right? Like just because they lost out on a John Turntine, just because they lost out on a Calvin Russell doesn't mean that they can't find someone, because like you can, these players, these recruits can still progress, right? Like they might, I was having a conversation with someone yesterday talking about Aiden Hutchinson. I saw Aiden Hutchinson as a recruit, and I mean, he was impressive, but I also wasn't necessarily that impressed, right? Like he had the D1 body, but it didn't really know that he looked like it didn't look like he knew what to do with it. That was in his, I believe, early in his junior year, but he came on in his senior year. That's when he really came on. Now, he was committed to Michigan by then, right? Like players can continue to improve. They can also devolve, but they can continue to improve. So understand that Michigan can still find some guys that maybe they don't get those big rankings bumps because the order's just kind of already set at this point, and the people, the powers that be have moved on to 2027. But like, there's that. But who are the ones in 2026 that we know of that Michigan's all out for? Obviously, Savon Heider is number one. He's 1A, B, C, and D. Michigan's been after him since Tony Alford got hired back before spring ball, or at the outset of spring ball, whenever it was, last year. Michigan's been after him for a year and a half. It would be a failure if Michigan isn't able to reel him in. Now, I'm going to push back against some message board fodder of like, Tony Alford is not doing his... I mean, like, listen, he brought in... It was a quietly good class. And now, granted, Donovan Johnson injured out for the year already. We're not going to see returns on that for some time. Jasper Parker is a guy that they feel is a find. I'm telling you right now, you need to keep your eyes and ears open for Jasper Parker. But it's one of those things where it's like Savion has not yet made a decision. And so unless that decision goes against Michigan and or he doesn't sign with Michigan, which might not always at this point be the fault of the coach recruiting him, because NIL is certainly a deal. Now, I don't think that's going to be the case for Savion. I think whoever he commits, he's going to stick to. But I think that he's number one, obviously. Deuce, Geralds, Sewanee, Georgia, Collins Hill. Like EJ Holland said, still saying that feels like it's an Oregon lean, probably, but Michigan's made up a lot of ground. It's a Michigan-Oregon battle. So is, he's listed as Westlake Village, Oaks Christian in Thousand Oaks, California. Right down the street from the house of my former house of my friend Corinne when we both lived in California. San Fernando Valley, all of that. Devon Benjamin, cornerback. Again, a Michigan-Oregon battle. I think Michigan will win one of those two at least. Maybe both, but maybe it is a clean sweep for Oregon. But I would be surprised if either go to a school that isn't one of those two at this juncture. But again, things can change on a dime. And then the other one would be Nick Abrams. I don't know what he had to say. I've been saying I still feel like he's going to end up in the class. Again, not Sam Webb level gut feeling, but just like a general gut feeling. I feel like Michigan will win that out. He's a Michigan type of guy. That's, I think, the big thing. And even though he had Michigan running fourth at the Rivals 5-Star Challenge, I still feel like Michigan will end up winning out next week when he picks. Because I just think that it's position in need, and he's a Michigan type of dude. Great kid. Reminds me, I think I said this right after I interviewed him, reminds me a lot of Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng in terms of disposition, types of things he had to say. And it's for that reason I felt like Owusu-Boateng was going to end up being a Wolverine as well. So we'll see on that. Those are the big four. Celestine Moa, I think Calvin Russell not ending up in Maize and Blue might help Michigan as far as the recruitment of Celestine Moa, because he wants to play both sides of the ball. Had a decision date, got pushed back. Seems indeterminate at this moment, so we'll see. Someone deciding tomorrow. DQ Forkpaw, I think, decides tomorrow. We'll see if Michigan has done enough for him. Michigan's always just kind of been there. We'll see if he's been to Ann Arbor multiple times. There's not necessarily a lot of hype. It doesn't really seem like he's got like a clear-cut favorite at this point. So we'll see with him. And then like guys like Ben Boulware, who's just quiet, right? Like there's just really nothing going. I think that will depend on what Deuce Geralds decides. Deuce Geralds and Devon Benjamin both deciding on August 2nd. So we'll have a pretty clear idea that day where things stand. But that's pretty much the board at this point, right? Like unless like something shifts and CJ Sadler's back on it, hasn't made a decision. That's pretty much the board outside of senior evals. So know those names, understand that things can change, and probably will. All right, that's going to do it for us today. Thank you again to all of our everydayers. Thank you for making us your first listen. We will talk to you again when we do. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Peace.